Yes, Jocelyn, I said it right. They, believe it or not, when I was talking about the Moab, there were some misinformation given about the four-wheel drive on the Moab. So that's why I'm saying, I already have one now. I'm scared what you're going to say. Oh, Diana, don't worry. So let me start by saying I was so impressed with the JL. When I went up there, they're beautiful Jeeps. I'm going over all the specs and the things tonight. They have done some amazing upgrades from the JK. Like, I love my JKU. I told them I will never get rid of my JKU Rubicon. That is my Jeep for life. It's never leaving the family. I love that Jeep. But I have to tell you, down the road, I wouldn't mind having a JL to drive too. The upgrades that they have made, they've made mechanical upgrades, they've made safety upgrades, and of course they have made comfort upgrades to kind of compete with some of the other SUVs that are around. I hate calling a Jeep an SUV, ladies. It kills me, but in the grand scheme of putting it into a box, it is considered an SUV. I'm seeing the same thing. Oh, Amanda, no, I have to say, I really did like a lot of things about the new JL. Any vehicle, and I gotta say this up front, ladies, any vehicle, it doesn't matter what year Jeep, or even what year vehicle, any vehicle, but when we're talking about Jeeps, they all have pros and cons. When the JK first came out, like the JK generation, they had pros, they had cons. People have different opinions, but again, I love my JKU. It's not going anywhere. So you just have to look at it that way. And really, it's not even pros and cons. They all have their strengths and their weaknesses. And that's why when we talk about builds, you're building up the weaknesses to make them stronger. And it's no different with the JL. So I'm really excited to share because I had a lot of questions personally answered for me. That was exciting. So I'm gonna jump right in and then stay tuned to the end so you can get my little honest opinion that's gonna come flying out of my mouth. Let's see. How do I get so I can share my screen? Oh, there we go. Sorry, ladies. Oh my gosh. Technical. Okay. So we're going to be jumping in. And if you have any questions, I will be jumping back on and I'll answer them once we get finished, because unfortunately, once I am in here kind of in teacher mode, I can't see other questions. So if you have questions, type them in. I'll come back and I'll be able to see them. And at the end, we'll go through everything together. And then I'm going to ask you ladies a couple questions and I'm going to share my biggest aha moment with you as well. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm in a great mood today, so I'm kind of all over the place. So I apologize for that. All right, so we are jumping in and we're starting with the JL generation overview. And really, this is still part of our understanding your Jeep build. I just wanted to really dive into this because it was something that's a little different, it's a little new. And I personally wanted to get some more information on them as well. So the new generation of Jeeps is the JL. So when we talk generations, I talked about this just a little bit. The generation is kind of the years and time frame and span of the Jeep. So we had like the CJ, then it went to the YJ. Well, before that we had the Willys, and then we had the CJ, and then we had the YJ, then it went to the TJ, LJ generation. When they stopped making that, we got into the JK, JKU generation. Now we are in the JL generation. So it is 2018 to current. So that's what generation means, if anybody has a question about that. So a lot has changed in the Jeep with the new design for the JL generation. The biggest change and goal that they made was to increase fuel mileage and to reduce emissions on these new Jeeps for lots of different reasons. And a lot of these upgrades and options that you're gonna see were to compete with other SUVs in this market. And so one of those is better drivability on the road as a daily driver, and then more of those modern comforts technology, like safety technology, that have become available. So if you own a JL, first of all, I want to say congratulations on your JL and being a part of this new generation. But with being the first of something, and I'm sure you ladies have experienced this a little bit, you're gonna notice there's not as much available when you start talking about builds and upgrades on the JL. A lot more has come out because a lot of the big companies have now done their work, put in the tech, the design, mocked up, made sure that it is the best parts that they can bring forward to everybody, to the consumer. So there's more available now, and there's more and more that's going to be coming out. So I know sometimes it can be frustrating to be like the first of something new, but I want to say congratulations and how exciting. And also be patient and remember, more and more is going to be coming out, more upgrades are going to be available, new products, because you want them to research and design to make sure that they're going to have a quality product that is going to hold up, going to last, and going to be an upgrade you want to make that's going to enhance your Jeep. That's why we have to be a little bit patient. So when we went over our Design Your Jeep build, as part of that, this is the My Jeep Specs download page that went with that training. And it's the specs that you need to know as part of your Design Your Jeep build. So in the full course, we go through all of that. And I am in the middle of working on it. So it is now, instead of a 7-series piece, it is now moved into a 10-part training series. I have revamped it. I'm still currently in the middle of redoing it as we speak. I was working on it before we jumped on, but that's going to be available, and it's going to make sure it covers all aspects, all eras, all generations. So that has been something that's been coming along. But in going through this piece, this is where you really get to understand your Jeep, where their specs are, where they are right now. So what I want to do is take this time tonight that we're going to basically walk through. If you were going to be filling out this page with me, and I'm going to be explaining what options were available and what the specs are for the JL together, so that you're not having to go and find it yourself. So we're going to jump in, and it's time to talk about the JL specs together. So the biggest changes that they have made as far as drivability and mechanical modifications to the JL in this new generation is the axles have completely changed, and they're now offering a full-time four-wheel drive system across most of the Jeeps, the different models, and we'll get into detail in that. Not to mention, they have upgraded features to help as daily drivers, but today I want to focus on the mechanical and build type specs on the JL, because I know it's much easier for you to pull up and you can see what interior is available, what safety and driving like sensors and options they've added. So I want to kind of go into the nitty gritty that's a little bit harder to navigate on your own. So this is probably the biggest change for me too, that I had to try to understand, because they now went to a 3rd generation axle. So what does that mean? That means that this 3rd generation, like let's say the Rubicon 44 HD wide front axle. Okay, so I have a JKU from the JK generation era Rubicon that has a Dana 44 in it. This new 3rd generation Dana 44 is an HD wide axle, is different than what I have in mind. So all the axles across the board under every model have changed. So everything's brand new. It's 3rd generation now. So nothing's going to be the same. That was a big learning piece for me. But so as we're talking about the axles, the great thing that has happened by redoing these axles is the front axle tubes. So like the actual shaft of the axle, the housing, the tube that your axle is going to go into are bigger. So they went up in diameter, which means they're going to be stronger. So that is a big upgrade that they've made. Now, it's not significant, but it is a change, and it is a change to making it stronger and thicker. So this is what was available as we're talking axles. So they have the 3rd generation Dana 44 HD rear axle, 3rd generation Dana solid front axle, 3rd generation Dana solid rear axle, and then in the Rubicon, you have the third generation Dana 44 HD wide front axle, third generation Dana 44 HD wide rear axle. So when we're talking about these wide axles, the wide 44 they've come out with, so that's only available on the Rubicon, but the difference in specs is amazing. So this new wide axle is going to be 1.5 inches wider than the other JLs. So the Rubicon with the wide axle is 1.5 inches wider than the JL Sport, Sahara, or the new Moab that they just came out with. Crazy part is they're 2.5 inches wider than the JK generation Rubicon. So that means this new wide axle is 2.5 inches wider than the axle I have on my Jeep. So it is almost considered a full width axle. It's not quite there, but it is pretty close. So that means this new Rubicon, if you have a JL Rubicon, is much wider. I know 2.5 inches doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about, you know, the stance, that does make a big difference, because when you do a build, put a wider tire on it. So if you were gonna look, you know, like straight at my Jeep, a little bit wider tire, so, you know, my stance is increased. Same thing with these new Jeeps with the JL, it's already here, you put a wider tire on it, so now your stance is even wider. So these new JL Rubicons, much wider. So I think that's exciting. I like, when I do a build, I like as wide and as squatty as I can go. So my center of gravity is as low as it can be, and I'm as wide as I can be for stability. So that's going to be helping with the off-road capabilities, as well as drivability and how it handles on the road. You just got to keep in mind you're a little wider. So you're going to be taking up almost the whole lane. You're not quite full width, but if you do an upgrade and put a much wider tire on that already wide axle, then you're probably going to be basically like a full width axle. So with the axles, really quickly, so what was available for the Sport is the third generation Dana solid front axle, third generation solid rear axle. The Sahara moved up. It has the all of them but the Rubicon have the third generation Dana solid front axle. The Sahara has the third generation Dana 44 HD rear axle. The Moab runs the third generation Dana solid front axle and the Dana solid rear axle. There's upgrades that you can make, but those are what are coming stock in them if there's no upgrades made. So keep an eye on that when you're doing your build specs for your Jeep, so that you know for sure which axles you have. Then the next thing that we're going to talk about that really changed, and this is the biggest change in the axle. If you have a JL, you probably already know you have this. If you're on here and you don't have one, this is a big change that has come out. So it is the front axle disconnect. And this is standard across the board in all JLs. So it doesn't matter what model you have of JL, you're going to have the front axle disconnect now. This really is to help with fuel efficiency. That is basically the reason that this came out, was to figure out how to have less moving parts all the time when you're driving down the road, so that your fuel economy goes up and their emissions goes down. So they were trying to make a more environmental friendly, as well as, you know, the gas mileage going up. So this is an actual picture so you can see this. This is actually, let me use my pointer. This is actually your front axle going across, all the way across. This is just zoomed in so that you can see what this front axle disconnect now looks like. This is different than what they used to have back in the 70s, you know, back when they did the vacuum front axle disconnect. This is different. So that's something to keep in mind. It's an old technology idea, but it is not the old technology. So this is going to be electronic. So this is going to be a much different beasts, if you want to say that. And really what this does, so this is like what it looks like when you take that box off. This is your entire axle shaft running across here inside. So instead of having a one-piece axle shaft with a tire on one side and a tire on the other side, this now has a brake over on the passenger side. So this would be if you are standing behind your axle, looking at it with the box, the electronic box off of the disconnect. So what has happened now is, so you have your axle running through here, your axle shaft. Well, instead of it being a solid axle shaft that comes out to the other side to meet this tire over here, you now have this box right here. This is where the actual electronic box sits here for the disconnect for that front axle disconnect. So what it does is this kind of mimics, we did a full video about manual locking hubs. If you didn't see that, at some point, it's still on this page. If you go to videos, you can watch it. And it talked about the manual locking hubs. And what that means is when you unlock the hub, absolutely nothing is moving in between, so that your axle shafts aren't moving, your differential's not moving, your gears aren't moving, the pinion isn't moving, everything is unlocked. Well, so what that does is it takes wear off of all of the parts, but it also, because you're not moving all those parts, is increasing the gas mileage. So this is different than the manual locking hub, but it's that same idea of a manual locking hub. But what it's doing is, this is a much easier way for new technology. I know a lot of people don't want to get out and manually lock and unlock their hubs. So this is kind of a lesser expensive as well way to go to be able to now, what happens when you're in two-wheel drive, this is disconnected. So the front axle is disconnected right here. What that does now is, where it's two pieces, and this is over on the passenger side, this is going to disconnect so that this right side on the passenger side is free, as well as this side. So now they're no longer turning everything together, so that it's not just rotating because the tire is moving. They're free so that they're able to spin, so that is taking some of the wear and tear and movement off of the parts. Now, the gears in the differential are still spinning. But what this is doing is everything's not having to be a rotating mass together at the same time, and they can move freely and independently. So that really, if you think about this, there's not as much drag. There's not as much pressure put on these parts, not as much drag on the vehicle that they're having to move everything, and that is what increases the gas mileage. So I will say, and this is something, again, hasn't been around a long time yet to see long-term what it's going to look like, but I know people who are taking these and want to upgrade them as more of off-road and trail vehicles, not necessarily with their focus on being their daily driver. They have already come up with ways that you can delete this. I know a lot of people were just replacing front axles, but then you have to put in an aftermarket chip so that the computer doesn't think this is still here. So there's a lot more pieces that go into it. The only reason that people are thinking about upgrading and deleting this is because it is more mechanical moving parts. And if you're going to, be putting a 37 or 40-inch tire on this Jeep and taking it out to do, much harder trails, you're going to upgrade the axle anyway at that point. But, if you're going to be abusing it, doing more off-roading, doing more trail riding, that's a big focus for this vehicle. That's just one more piece down the road that could fail on you. That is something, that has been brought up. There is a way to delete this. I know there's going to be more and more options that are going to be coming out as well. But I know there are already some out already. So when you're doing your Jeep build, you can think about what is your primary use for your vehicle. So if your JL's primary use is going to be your daily driver, you're going to be doing, even if you say I'm going to be doing 60, 70% daily driver and I still want 30, 40% off, I'm going to be on trails, I'm going to be driving, but they're going to be, easy to moderate trails. This isn't something that you need to worry about. And of course, it's one of those questions that's still up in the air a little bit is, how is this going to hold up and perform long term? But I feel like they've done other upgrades to help with protection we're going to get into. So I don't think this is something you need to think about, worry about, put on your build list, unless you were going to build, 37, 40, 40-inch tire platform build, or you're going to say like, I want to be doing moderate to extreme trails. Those are going to be the only times that you're going to be thinking about if you want to go ahead and replace and upgrade this front axle lock disconnect. But for 90% of us ladies, it's not going to make a difference at all, and it's not anything to even think about. I just wanted to show you because it was so different. That is probably the biggest change that I saw with the JL. So then a new and different build aspect is that the aftermarket upgrade and delete of the front axle disconnect. I just told you when and why, sorry. And then differentials, we're gonna talk about differentials really quickly. So the only Jeep, and this has been this way forever, the only Jeep that is available stock with selectable lockers or with lockers is your Rubicon. So your other Jeeps, so the Sport Sahara and the Moab do not come with an option to have lockers. That is only available in the Rubicon. Now, can you buy a Sport and put lockers on it? Yes. But you're gonna have to make sure that they are lockers equipped for a JL, so that they're gonna work with what you have. And that's really no different when you start looking at all the different generations of Jeeps. I don't want you ladies to think like, oh my gosh, I have a JL, so now everything has to work on a JL. No different than a CJ has some CJ parts that it has to have specifically made for the CJ. Same thing with the YJ, same thing with the JK, JKU generation. Like if you re-gear, you need to say, I have I need to re-gear 410s in a JK, because things are different within every era of Jeep. So that is normal. I don't want you to feel like that's any different based on a JL or anything else. They all have different things. So that is totally normal. But as far as factory options for your differential, you can get, they call it the anti-spin differential, which is an anti-slip, is an upgrade option in the Sport, the Sahara, and the Moab now. So you can do that as an upgraded rear differential so that you can get that anti-spin differential in the back on those 3 Jeeps as well. Then we're going to talk gears. So the gears did change a little bit. The Rubicon has continued to stay with the 410 gear. The Sport Sahara and Moab come with a 3.45 gear in them. That is what's coming stock in these Jeep models. Something to think about, again, totally normal, because the JKU has a different size gear in it than like the TJ. So the JL gear size is different than the JK. So if you go to re-gear, you need to just make sure that you tell them it's for a JL. I know they're re-gearing the JLs. A lot of stuff has come out on as far as like that kind of technology that is ready for you. And then as far as the build side goes, really, if you think about it, your gear, like tire to gear ratio, is going to be the same. Gears are gears. They still have to turn the same mass. They're still the same gear themselves, regardless as to what size the carrier is and what size the actual gear itself is. It's still the exact same. So when you're doing your building out your build for your JL, your how to figure out tire size for gear is going to be exactly the same. So none of that has changed. Now, this is something that's kind of cool too. So this was I was sitting in a Moab, and I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a shadow here. But so this comes factory stock in the Moab, and it is available in the Sahara as well. And it is their Select Track full-time four-wheel drive. So they kind of call it the set it and forget it. So what this does is this is giving you the option that you can put this in for high auto and just drive. And you don't have to worry about if it's in two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, if you're on the road. So this is going to be such an added benefit for your daily driver. If you live somewhere where there's snow, ice, bad road conditions, you can put it in the for high auto. And what that does is this is going to keep it in two-wheel drive until a tire loses traction. So then as soon as a tire loses traction, the four-wheel drive is automatically going to kick in to help in those conditions and in that weather. So this is kind of, if you think of like all-time four-wheel drive, some of the other vehicles that have that, this is the comparison. But what I did like about it is you still have the option though of being able to put it in, four-wheel high, four-wheel low, and two-wheel high. So you're not losing anything, you're gaining the auto that you can put it in and drive. And you can drive it in the for high auto on dry roads, on pavement, on the interstate, because of the design of this. So it is more of allowing for the daily driver and then functioning in bad weather as well. So this was something that, is different, that's available. Like I said, this comes factory stock in the Moab, and it is an upgrade option in the Sahara as well, so that you have that. Now, the only difference that changes when you get this Select Track full-time four-wheel drive is your transfer case is going to change to a 2.72 to 1 reduction. And then this is not available in the Rubicon because the Rubicon has lockers and it has a 4-to-1 transfer case reduction. So this is only available in the Sahara and the Moab. But it will be great for functionality on the road. And you still have the ability to put it in four low and be able to control that when you're on the trail. Something to think about though is you're not going to be able to easily add lockers and change this system down the road. You can, and I know more and more is going to become available for this. It's just going to be a little bit tougher. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. But I thought this was a great feature and upgrade that they have put in there, because now you do have the option to have, full-time four-wheel drive, especially in the winter, or if you're in the mud or on a muddy dirt road, you can just set it and you can drive like normal, and the Jeep won't kick in the four-wheel drive until you need it. So I thought that was really neat. So here's another exciting piece. So the JL, and I'm doing this in comparison to the last generation. So in comparison to the JKU to now, in this new JL, what has changed? So they have made some great upgrades in strength. So there is stronger upper control mount. That is a big thing. Stronger tie rods. They have upgraded, beefed up to make the knuckles stronger. These are the things that when you're looking through the Jeep build sheet, you have to upgrade. You have to upgrade your mounts, you have to upgrade your tie rod, you have to upgrade your knuckles, all those things as you're going. I'm hoping this means they're going to last longer, hold up better, and you're not going to have to upgrade them as early in your build based on the tire size and the platform that you're running, because they have already beefed those up. And another really exciting thing is they have really beefed up the steering and drag linkage, and they've actually kind of recomposed the actual steering and linkage, which is nice, because that was one of the biggest things that would fail in the JK and the JKU. That's why when we go over, your build, you have to be thinking about upgrading your steering when you go to a 37 or bigger tire long-term for longevity. You can run like that for a while, but then your steering became one of your weakest points because of that drag link, because of the way that the steering was set up. that was something that you had to think about. This is going to give you a little bit longer option or a little bit different tire size option as to when you're going to have to upgrade. Because another thing that they did is they have put the Hydro Boost steering. So if you have a JL, you have Hydro Boost steering, which is like the steering booster that they have, like we have them in our big trucks, like our big 1-ton trucks already have those. So what that is it's kind of like a hydraulic booster. It's not like Hydro Assist. It is different than that. But what that does is that's helping with your steering itself. But one thing to think about is in the JL, the steering and the brakes, because they're both the Hydro Boost, are linked together. So that's something to think about if you are running a Rubicon. So if you have a JL Rubicon, you're out on the trail, you're running your lockers. You don't want to keep your front locker on your entire ride. You want to turn it on when you need it, turn it off. Because what's going to happen, if you have a Rubicon, I know a lot of the ladies with JK generation Rubicons have probably experienced this. If you run your locker like the entire trail ride, or even when you're running your locker, it is much harder to steer. Well, that's putting more pressure on your steering components, but then also your steering box. So with this, something to just keep in mind, so you're safe, is if you're in the Rubicon, use your locker when you need it, turn it off. You should be doing that anyway. We talked about that in the training, but that way, what you want to think about is if for some reason you put your lockers on, you drive the entire ride, and you're putting more stress on all of your steering components when the front end is locked. If for some reason you had an issue with your steering, you're going to lose your brakes as well because they are run together. So that is something to keep in mind. And I don't know, this is another question that'll be up in the air. I don't know what that's going to mean when you go to upgrade your brakes, or if you wanted to go to like an actual hydraulic assist steering, like if you're going to run like a 37 or a 40 or a 42-inch tire and you need the actual hydraulic assist. I'm not quite sure how some of that's going to work. Those are some of those questions that are still kind of yet to be determined. But the great news is that as of right now, you have much better steering, which is exciting. Another cool thing that they have done in the Sahara and the Moab, they have added gas shocks. So, the Rubicon still has the regular shock. They all still have the coil springs, but so the Rubicon has the regular shock like you saw in the JK and the JKU, but the Moab and the Sahara have a gas shock replacement, which aids in the smoothness of the ride. So that is where it's going to ride better. You're not going to kind of like feel like you're driving a Jeep. It's going to feel a little smoother. So I thought that was really neat too. So like I said, there were a lot of great upgrades that were made. Another thing, so with the JL, that means that there's different suspension and coils, and you can run a 33 right off the showroom. And the Moab actually comes with a 32 straight off the lot. And so that's something to think about, is you can run a 33, absolutely no lift. And I know people are running 35s without needing any lift. So what that's doing is that's changing your build, because it's going to change your build platform of when you need to get a lift and how much lift you do need to get. If you're going to be doing, off-road driving, trail riding, I definitely would do some kind of lift with a 35 so you don't get into the fenders and you have a little more clearance, a little more travel room. But if you're driving around town, having fun, going on a little bit of trails, you can run the 35 under there without having to do a lift on it. So it's been very beneficial in some ways because it's changing the build. Again, there's certain things you're going to have to overbuild, and they're going to be a little bit harder to change into build. And then there's other aspects that have made it easier for your build. So it's kind of weighing itself out. So the Rubicon and the Moab also feature a steel bumper, and it's a 3-part steel bumper. So that means you can remove this side over here on both sides, and it can become a stubby bumper so that you can have your stock Rubicon or Moab bumper, and it's steel, so it's upgraded. You can add a hoop to the actual bumper that's here. It has the brackets for it, and it actually has the winch plate mount as well. So again, this is another benefit that they came out with, because it's keeping you from having to upgrade from a stock bumper if you don't want to, because it's steel. You have the attachments to put a hoop on it, and you can run your winch because it has the winch plate. So I thought that was kind of exciting too. So bottom line, what does this mean for designing your Jeep build with the JL? So I kind of have covered that as we've gone through, but really if you think about what that means is a lot of your foundation is going to be the same. I mean, it sounds like there were a lot of changes made, but really they were kind of minimal changes. So when you're thinking about designing your Jeep build and you have a JL, yes, some pieces and parts have changed. That's why I went back and I'm redoing our Design Your Jeep build. So it covers everything from the CJ to the JL. But so what's going to be different? Well, so you're going to think about, you're not going to need to do an upgraded lift quite as soon. But what that also means is you're going to follow the same process. So you're going to start at the very beginning. You're going to figure out where your Jeep is right now. So what gears, and I hope tonight helped you with that, to know what gears, what axles, kind of what your specs are in your Jeep right now as you go to design your Jeep build. Same thing, you're going to pick your tire platform first. You're going to build everything around that tire platform. What it means is some of your upgrades, as far as linkage, as far as knuckles, and as far as brackets, are not going to have to be made until you move up to a bigger tire size. Another thing is your steering isn't going to have to be upgraded till you move up to a bigger tire size. And then, you know, the flip side on that is if you want to add lockers, it's going to be a little bit harder process, but it is still able to be done. So don't think that you can't do it. And again, it's going to get easier and easier. I actually was looking before I got on here, you know, Dynatrac, a great company. They have a lot of the JL parts already for you out there. You know, GenRight, Artec, all of those, the big name companies have come out with parts and replacements and upgrades, and you know they're going to work, and they've taken their time to design them. So that's really exciting. So your build is basically going to be the same with just a couple differences, but you need to go through the process the same so that you have your design, your layout, and you know exactly what you are going to change. I already went through that. Okay, so thank you for jumping on and joining me tonight. I was really excited to get to share all of this with you ladies. I know it kind of seemed like a lot all at once, and a lot of kind of technical all at once, but what I found and learned for me when I pulled up, and I still have it, so when I pulled up the actual build sheet, like I tell you ladies, if you don't know what specs your Jeep currently has, go on to Jeep, put in your VIN number, it'll give you everything. And what I found by doing the JL is when you go to the spec sheet, it's not as clear to kind of navigate. So I'm hoping by going through that tonight, that's helped to clear up a little bit, you know, understand the new axle, understand what that, the axle disconnect is, how it works, where it is, all the pieces that are a little bit hard to kind of navigate on your own, so that now you really know your Jeep, you understand it, you understand all the pieces, you kind of know what the strengths are for your Jeep and what the weaknesses are going to be. And again, like I said, it's like that across the board. The CJ, it had its strengths and its weaknesses. The YJ had its strengths and its weaknesses. Same thing with the TJ, LJ. Same thing with the JK generation. There's always something that is going to be just awesome in the Jeep, and then something that's going to be like, well, you know what, that needs to be changed. But that's why there's builds, so that you can make it the best that you can be. So I'm going to jump over really quickly. Okay, so I'm back on here live. And I'm gonna jump over, see if there's any questions. Let's see, thanks, appreciate you. Thanks so much, thank you. Oh, thank you, ladies. You guys are so sweet. Okay, so before I go into, let's see, I'm a new Jeep owner. So when would I want to disconnect my front axle, better fuel mileage? Lisa, that is a great question. So here's the great thing about this front axle disconnect. You don't do anything. So it's not like the sway bar. It's not like the lockers. You don't have to do anything. This is, I would say, the vehicle thinking for you technology. So anytime you are in two-wheel drive, it disconnects on its own by a sleeve that is in there that kind of slides. So when you put it in four-wheel drive, that sleeve is going to connect, and now your axle is one piece. When you're in two-wheel drive, the sleeve moves, and now they're free to rotate. So the nice thing is when it comes to that front axle lock, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to think about it, worry about it, anything like that. It's going to do it all on its own, just based on if you are in two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. So there are a couple questions that I am still working on getting some answers for. So from what I was told, and this is why I'm bringing it forward to you ladies, from what I was told, in the Sahara and the Moab with the all-time four-wheel drive, when you have that in two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive auto, the Jeep will decide in four-wheel drive auto. If it's in two-wheel drive, your axle is going to be disconnected. If you go to lose traction, when it engages four-wheel drive, it's going to connect. So even if you are in that auto four-wheel drive, when you put it over an auto four-wheel drive, when it's in two-wheel drive, it will be disconnected. If you need four-wheel drive, when the Jeep kicks in the four-wheel drive for you in the auto, it will go ahead and it's going to close so that you have four-wheel drive. So it's still all going to be done by your Jeep. But if you put it in two-wheel drive, it's open, disconnected. If you put it in four-wheel drive, then it's going to close and it's going to be connected. So you don't have to worry about anything. That was a great question though, because I know when you think about like the disconnect for the sway bar, you still have to hit the button to disconnect it and reconnect it. Well, unless you're going over 15 miles an hour in four-wheel drive. So the Jeep does not want you to have your sway bar disconnected over 15 miles per hour. And sometimes it will try to reconnect if you have a Rubicon that has the push button disconnect. So those are just kind of the little things that are nice to know, the technical. Let's see. I'm stock right now and it handles really well off-road before any mods. I was surprised. Amanda, so it is amazing, the technology, the mechanics, the time that they have put into designing and building these Jeeps. They really do a great job just stock off the showroom floor. Even more so, I feel like now with the JL, because you have a little bit more ground clearance. And then, you can put a little bit bigger tire without having to do a big build. So just went from 2010 to 2018. So happy. Oh, congratulations, Judy. Oh, what's wrong? Lisa. Oh, don't freak out. There's nothing wrong with the JL. It's just knowing the Jeep, knowing the parts, knowing how it works, knowing where, when you start talking about upgrading, where you want to kind of look at and where you don't need to look at. And every Jeep, every vehicle that is ever made has a weakness and a strength. So just remember that. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I have a JL. My actuator has been replaced 3 times. I said all 3 times it's been faulty. It seems to me it goes bad after I've been in water or mud. Any thoughts on why this keeps happening? Oh, I hate to hear that. So unfortunately, that is still an electronic. So anytime electronics get wet, there is a chance that something could happen. I know they have come out with some aftermarket like reinforcement skid plates, some different protection for that actual electronic box there, since it is right there on the axle. But I don't think that would do anything to help get it watertight. I will say in the CJ, because we have a bunch of different generation Jeeps, in our CJ, where the computer was mounted, anytime we did water crossings, water got in there and it killed it. I mean, like killed the entire Jeep. I had to sit there for like at least, 3 hours to get the computer to dry out before it would even start and it could even drive to go anywhere. So we did have to relocate that, and we did do a watertight seal with that. So I will see if I can find out some information and see if anybody else has found a way to make that watertight, because I know the JL is going to be going off-road as well. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see you on Friday. Have a wonderful week. Good night, ladies. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening to me ramble. I apologize, but I will see you soon. Bye, ladies.